Hi there, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Trauma Survival Guide. And in this video, I want to talk about trauma and distorted perceptions of reality. Now, this is a topic that is really close to my heart and I feel very passionate about because I think there's a tremendous level of misunderstanding and fear around this particular topic. I want to just explore a little bit about the ways that trauma can change the way that we sense, perceive, and interpret the world around us. So just to give one little personal example, we're living here in Israel at the moment, in the north of Israel, during a war. And on a near daily basis, we're hearing explosions and booms around us, and we're getting sirens and having to go into the bomb shelter in our apartment. We have a minute that we have to enter the bomb shelter. So this is the reality that we're living in at the moment. And one thing that is just interesting to be aware of is how I think there's hardly anyone in Israel at the moment who isn't in some sort of state of hypervigilance, which means that we're all sort of hearing booms and sirens when there are no booms and sirens. And when we're out in any kind of social gathering, someone will kind of be like, was that a boom? And then the others are like, no, I think that was just like a car on the road, or that was something else that was not a boom in the sky. And we all just kind of laugh about it because we all realise that we're all just so hyper attuned to background noises that normally our brains would just filter out, and we wouldn't even pay them any attention. And that's just like one example of how trauma and stress can change the way that we sense and perceive, and can lead us to see and hear things that may not even be there, or interpret things that are there in a way that may not be right. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has experienced this kind of state of hypervigilance caused by stress in other ways in my life. Another example that comes to my mind was a few years back when our son was going through some school trauma, and he was highly stressed at school. And in turn, I was very stressed because I was working very hard to help him regulate his own emotions and to overcome this trauma that he was experiencing. And at the same time, I was quite regularly getting phone calls or rather unpleasant messages from other parents of children in his class complaining about my son's behaviour towards their children, which actually, it was nothing all that terrible, but parents can be quite cruel to other parents sometimes. So there was I in this heightened sense of stress, receiving these attacks from other parents. And I really became aware the following year when my son moved school, whenever there were social events, or when I first went to a parents' meeting and met the other parents, I was aware in my own mind that if I saw a group of parents like chatting together or laughing together, then I was convinced that they were talking about me and my son. And I knew this was irrational. I knew the chances they were talking about my son were probably quite low, but it was this fixed belief that even though I could reason it through, it kind of hit me on an emotional level. Every time I kind of saw a sideways glance or saw them looking at me, I sort of immediately perceived it to be that they hated me, they hated my son. It just triggered in me this emotional response that was a distortion and probably a complete misperception. We're living in a world where any sort of emotional suffering and stress response is medicalized and given a clinical label. And in some ways this can be helpful because it can maybe bring greater clarity and insight. Possibly it can produce more understanding and compassion about these issues. But in other ways, I think that making everything medical can actually do some damage, because I think it sort of gives us the message, if we're experiencing these symptoms, that that what we're going through isn't normal, that we've now kind of stepped outside the realm of ordinary human experience, and what we have is now clinically called a disease. And when you're talking about stress responses, and particularly distortions and misperceptions of reality, what this disease label does is it takes symptoms that are already terrifying and it adds even more fear, because we start thinking, wow, now I'm losing my mind. I now have a disease that I've got to, that the doctors now have to tell me what to do. I'm no longer in control of this. And we sort of lose our sense of power. And when you're talking about seeing and hearing things that are not actually there, then people will very often jump to the most terrifying conclusions and think, wow, I must be crazy. I must have a lifelong disease. And then people will start diagnose themselves with psychosis and schizophrenia, which is absolutely terrifying. And often also because of these labels, people will not seek help and not want to tell anybody else when they experience distortions, because they're scared of these labels and scared of what it's going to mean. But on this video, I'm so passionate just to put the message out there that really and truly, if any single one of us was under enough stress, if the stress was significant enough for any one of us, we could all start seeing and hearing things that are not really there. And there's not one particular type of person who's more vulnerable to the effects of stress. We're all vulnerable to these same effects of stress, and any one of us could develop fleeting psychotic symptoms if we find ourselves under enough pressure and trauma in our lives. And another message of hope I want to put out there is that in the vast majority of instances, once the stress is relieved, the symptoms pass. For instance, I'm not expecting that most Israelis in this country are going to be imagining booms and sirens where there are none for the rest of their lives. But of course, for those who personally have been injured by rockets, or who have been in a house that has been hit by a rocket, then yes, those hearing imaginary booms might go on for a lot longer and might touch a much deeper nerve and be harder to move beyond than my responses, which I'm experiencing this hypervigilance, but I personally haven't been directly injured by a rocket, so I'm not expecting that I will be in this state for the rest of my life. Another really key thing that I want to put out on this video is that supportive relationships can go so far in helping to relieve our stress related symptoms when we are experiencing misperceptions and distorted reality. Like the example I've been returning to in this video of these imaginary booms, the fact that we're all experiencing the same thing, and we can be in a social event and someone say, "Was that a boom?" And then the others can just laugh and say, no, that wasn't at all. But yet we're together in it. There's not any judgment or condemnation for that person who hears something that's not real. The fact that there's this kind of shared reality, it means that we're not really afraid of this hypervigilance we're in. We're not afraid of the symptoms themselves. And it's the same, I know people who have experienced fires in their home who imagine that they can smell burning when there is no burning. And again, the same principle applies. If they have supportive relationships and they one time are experiencing this smell of burning, if they're able just to turn to their friends or family, whoever they're with, and say, "Is something burning?" And the response they get is, no, it's okay, there isn't something burning, without ridicule and judgment and making them feel stupid about it, those people are much more likely to just be able to reintegrate their perceptions and their senses and stay grounded than if they were experiencing like ridicule and being told, no, you're crazy, there's something wrong with you, you should get this checked out. Not saying it's wrong to get things checked out, but it can be like used as a weapon. And particularly, I guess, a major passion of mine is for people who experience traumas that are less socially acceptable traumas that happen in secret, maybe sexual traumas, or ones within close relationships that they're not able to tell other people, and also children who experience traumas while they're pre-verbal or they can't put into words or don't understand. Now, at these sorts of times, those people are going to have the same trauma stress responses. So you could have a child who has a totally irrational fear of bathrooms or water, or an object that may have been used abusively in the past. And these people may not even know why they're experiencing such a phobia or such a fear response to this object, that no one else experiences that same response. And the message is these people who can't really put into words and what they're experiencing, and don't have like a shared reality with other people who can laugh it off and be in the same boat as them. These ones are far more likely to just receive a medical label of, wow, this is in your mind, this is a disease, you are going crazy, and to be put down the medical clinical route rather than having people taking them seriously and actually working out where this distortion came from and helping to normalize it. So I guess, like, maybe this video has been a bit rambling because it's touching on topics that are very deep, and as I say, ones that I care about very passionately. But I suppose the essence of what I want to say in this message is, for anyone who is experiencing trauma, if you find that you are seeing and hearing things, and if you find yourself believing things that you know are not true, but holding on to these irrational beliefs, these are normal trauma responses. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lifelong disease. And there are ways to heal and move beyond and reintegrate all of these responses. But the absolute key, as far as I have come to understand and in my own experience, is within relationships. It's not enough. I'm not saying that the medical professionals don't have a role, but that's not enough. Within our own communities and friendships and families, we can hold each other, we can help to reground each other, we can love each other. And I think that these are very powerful tools for all of us to just be able to reintegrate and to stay connected and to stay well. So I'm sure I'll explore this topic a bit more in more videos, because I think it's important. But I'll say goodbye for now and see you in the next video.